Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to our first Breakfast Bites webinar with Fianza. Today's webinar is being co-hosted with the Rock Trust and Sharon Gurr, who's going to talk to us about motivational interviewing over the next 20 to 30 minutes. On your webinar platform, you should be able to have a small little box on the right-hand side of your screen. Within that box, you can ask questions during the webinar. I'll be taking note of the questions as we go through, and I can put the questions to Sharon at the end. So please feel free to use that question box throughout if there's anything that you'd like more information on, and we can have a small exchange at the end of this presentation. The other thing I'd like to note is this is our first webinar in the Breakfast Bites series. It's a webinar series that we're hosting while we're all in some form of COVID-19 shutdown, lockdown, self-isolation, social distancing, call it what you will. But I think a lot of us are working from home, so it's a way to try and connect professionals from the homeless sector across Europe together, to have a little bit of motivation, to learn a little bit about what's happening in different organizations and services across Europe. So if you'd like to know more, you can go over to our website on the Breakfast Bites section, and there you can see that next week we have another webinar planned at the same time on how do we define youth homelessness in Europe. But we also have a link on the webpage, so if you'd like to propose yourself, your organization, or somebody that you know to become a speaker in the webinar series, please feel free to get in touch, because we're really happy to facilitate that if there's people who would like to present. But all that said, I'm going to hand over to Sharon now, who's going to talk to us a little bit more details about motivational interviewing.
Thanks, Robbie. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time out to join us this morning. And I'm hoping that you will be able to get something out of this morning's talk. So when we talk about motivation, particularly when we're working with the clients that a lot of us work with, you know, we come across this term complex needs, and underlying complex needs is trauma. And I think in a lot of our experiences, motivation is a huge big obstacle, or it's a huge big challenge that as workers that we face on a regular basis. And if we were to put it into perspective a little bit, we can kind of see that for most people affected by trauma, the lack of motivation and direction in life is greatly affected. And along with this, the inability to identify and pursue goals for a better future. And I'm going to highlight that word desired better future, because it's going to crop up a lot this morning. And I think the key that we need to remember here, it's not our desired better future, but it's our client's desired better future. And motivational interviewing techniques are a set of skills designed to support individuals engage in their process of personal motivation to change and to achieve their desired goals for their better future. So I think that kind of sums up, you know, our motivation to do what we do. It's not about achieving our goals, but it's about pulling alongside our clients to help them use the skills that they've got already to achieve their desired better future. The definition of motivational interviewing is it's a skillful clinical style for eliciting from patients, but in our case from clients, their own good motivation for making behavior changes in the interests of their health. The people behind this model is Miller and Rolonik. And if any of you would like to kind of look into a little bit more about motivational interviewing, please Google. They've brought out a couple of books on motivational interviewing. And it's very popular in working with people with complex needs, in kind of helping them to work through the changes that they have identified in their lives. One of the words that is very, very common in the work that we do with working with complex needs is this term ambivalence. And for a lot of us workers, it's this ambivalence that sometimes forms such a huge barrier in helping our people, the clients that we work with, make those changes. So when we talk about ambivalence, it refers to mixed and conflicting feelings and thoughts towards a behavior our clients may have. The conflict that goes on within an individual is that part of them may want to hang on to a particular behavior because in their experience, it's brought them comfort. It's been a positive influence in their lives. A good example of this would be somebody that has got a drug habit. If you were to sit down and have a chat with them, they would describe that drug habit helps block out the negative feelings, those negative thoughts that keep on going through their minds, reminding them of, past negative experiences, triggers. So to somebody that's, living with flashbacks and triggers, we can understand why they make the decisions and choices they do in terms of this ambivalence. On the one hand, what we would call bad behavior to them has kept them going. However, on the other hand, the other feeling and thought that's present is that it interferes with their present quality of life. And remember, we spoke about the desired better future. And unfortunately, a lot of the habits and behaviors that our clients have adopted as a way of coping will also stand in their way of achieving goals for that desired better life. And I'm sure all of us right now can think of clients that we're working with, whether it's self-harm, whether it's promiscuous behavior. We all work with clients that present with complex needs and the behaviors that go with that. So ambivalence is quite dominant when we work with people and supporting them to change. And obviously this ambivalence will have a huge influence on the individual's motivation to change as well. So bear that in mind. It's not unusual to have one person with conflicting thoughts and feelings about a particular topic. And also, just to reiterate that, think about the times you've gone in to visit a client, and on the one hand, they're pleased to see you, they're engaging, but then on the next moment, they're totally the opposite. And that's what we refer to as ambivalence. So bear that in mind and understand what that is. It's the one part of them that's been keeping them safe. But on the other hand, there's a risk to them to let that go and to kind of look at change. But let's move on and have a look at what motivates individuals to change. And we look at two motivations. One is extrinsic motivation, where the desire to change is motivated and influenced by a reward or a fear of punishment. And an example of this would be, again, let's look at, people with addictions. I'm sure you've come across individuals that perhaps through court, through the judiciary system, they were not, they were prevented from going into prison on the basis that they continue to go for what we call drug testing orders, or if your client has to evidence that they're not taking drugs anymore, that will keep them out of prison. So that becomes a fear of punishment. Another example of extrinsic motivation, if we look at the reward system, is if you attend college, you will get so much money per week. Again, so the motivation there is the finance. Now, let's move on to the next motivation, which is what we call intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation looks at the driving force from within the individual. So there, what we're doing is we're tapping into the person's personal values, goals, and belief system to bring about change. And this is what we want to aim for, rather than the intrinsic motivator. So the extrinsic motivator. The intrinsic motivator, an example of that is somebody will, decide to go for a job, attend a job interview. They want that job not because of the money. Yes, the money does play a role, but what's motivating them is that job meets their personal values. So they've got a personal goal of self-fulfillment. And so they are not motivated by external factors like reward or punishment. And I think as workers, this is the motivation that we want to kind of focus on and kind of encourage our clients to kind of tap into this motivation, because as you can see, it's based on self-efficacy and self-development. Okay, so if we were to look at the nuts and bolts of how to support our people, our clients, in changing, one of the tools that we use as support workers is that on a practical level, what we can do is we can sit with our clients, and for a lot of our clients, pen and piece of paper. For a lot of the young people I worked with, it was quite handy to have a pen and piece of paper, something that they can see, feel, and touch. And it's just a case of going through the list and helping them draw up a list of pros and cons, or what we call benefits and costs to that particular behavior. So, for example, if somebody said, I want to give up smoking. Well, let's have a look at that. What are the benefits of smoking? And what are the cost of smoking? And that's the starting point. And remember, it's at this point that you want your client to take the lead in that. So it's to encourage them to come up with their pros and cons. Okay, because if we can get our clients to take ownership, then what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to tap into the intrinsic motivators. The next topic I'd like to look at is this idea of change talk. Change talk is when we are listening very carefully to the client's language, because what we want to do is we want to kind of see where they are on the cycle of change. And yes, it is a cycle, for depending on where our client's motivation lies. For some clients, they haven't even thought of giving up that habit, that behavior. So it's about seeing where they are. Are they on the pre-contemplation stage, where they're just thinking about change? Or have they already got a plan of action in place? Are they contemplating? Are they preparing? Have they put their plans in action? Are they actually carrying out those plans? And then the next stage of the cycle of change is maintenance. Are they maintaining that change of behavior? And part of that cycle of change is relapse, because a lot of our clients will relapse, but don't see it as necessarily a negative thing. It's part of the cycle, and it's at that relapse stage that we can then tap into that self-efficacy again, where we can kind of ask them, well, what did you do to get you to the maintenance stage? And then it's kind of highlighting their intrinsic skills that they've got. Well, actually, for example, well, I made sure that I woke up 8 o'clock every morning, and I didn't sleep late, because when I slept late, for example, that's when my motivation lacked. Okay, and then that's what you can take. Well, let's go back to that then, for example. Let's go back to making sure that you're up at 8 o'clock in the morning, because obviously that worked for you previously. So let's put that into practice again. So can you see there's examples that we can take from what worked for them in the past, and let's rather use that than, so it's a case of let's not reinvent the wheel. The other tool that we use in motivational interviewing skills is, I call it being curious but not being judgmental. And it's about four little tips in our communication style. Number one, ask open-ended questions. How, what, where? You know, be careful, be mindful of using the word why, because that kind of has a sort of problem with adrenaline, and people will normally become defensive, and that will shut down conversation. So if we can rather use words like, tell me about what happened, you know, how did you come to that decision? So ask open-ended questions. The next conditioner is what core condition is affirmations. This is very important when we are listening without judgmentalness, and we're looking for statements like, you know, I would struggle with the same thing. I get where you come excuse me, I get where you're coming from. That makes a lot of sense to me. I can see why you would choose to do that, or I can see how that behavior has kept you safe for so long. Remember, we're not agreeing with that behavior, but we validating it, which is a huge, big difference. After that, we can look at reflection. And an example of that would be a statement like, well, on the one hand, you're saying X, Y, and Z, but I'm also hearing you say that you want to give it up as well. Can you explain it to me? So can you see it's that reflection, it's presenting to them this ambivalence. It's reflecting back to them. So on the one hand, you're saying that, you know, your cannabis use keeps you calm, it doesn't make you violent and aggressive. But then I'm also hearing you say that financially you're struggling to make ends meet. So present that to them and let them sit with that for a minute and see how they kind of come to terms with that. And then at the end of that, it's good to summarize. So a statement of summary would be something along the lines of, so I'm hearing you say that, you know, you using your cannabis regularly every day is helping you with your anxiety. But then you also identify that, you know, cannabis is also eating into your bank balance. So those four core conditions, those four techniques, open-ended questions, validation or affirmations, reflection, and summary, would elicit what we call change talk. And remember, this is not something that we can expect our clients to grasp overnight. It's going to take a while. But if we can get into the habit ourselves of listening very carefully, not to judge our clients, but to kind of journey with them and pull alongside them and kind of empathize and walk in their shoes and kind of understand why they do what they do, why they've made those choices, and work with the ambivalence. Work with the ambivalence. So in terms of motivational interview skills, we work closely with motivational interview skills work hand in hand with solution-focused skills, which is another technique that we can look at as well. But both of these techniques are goal-orientated. And the nice thing about them as well is that they pay careful attention to the future and not to the past, ensuring that the client is made aware of their existing skills and experiences of self-efficacy and empowerment. And I think that's so, so important, because one of the principles when we're working with trauma and clients that have been traumatized is that we want to give them back the power and the control that's been taken away from them. And working with motivational interview skills, this is what we can do. It's about taking them back to a time in their lives when things were going well for them and asking them, what did you do to achieve those goals? So it's not us going in with our ideas, but it's about tapping into what they already know. And it's about promoting that self-efficacy and boosting their confidence and not reinventing the wheel, but kind of tapping into what is already there within our clients. And then to conclude, by reminding our clients of what they can do and rather what they can't do, will enable them to achieve their desired better future. And remember, it's their desired better future, not our desired better future for them. So that's motivational interviewing skills. If any of you would like a copy of the presentation, it will be made available on the website, which Robbie will make available. So please go out, keep yourself safe, and we will speak again in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them right now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sharon. It was a really, really interesting presentation. If you have any questions, you can place them into the box in the right-hand part of your screen and I'll feed them back to Sharon. In the meantime, just a quick reminder that this is our first webinar, and so the recording will be up on the website probably by Friday. You'll all get an email when that webinar is uploaded. And on the website, you can also see the other webinars that we are proposing in the coming weeks. And as I mentioned at the start, a link where you can propose yourself, your organization, or somebody you know to do a presentation. So please take advantage of that if you have an interesting practice that you'd like to share with us. So we have a few questions for you, Sharon. The first is, do you have any good settings for where you can do motivational interviewing? A neutral place? Do you do it in their place? What's the best environment to be asking these kind of questions?
I think the best environment would be where your client feels safe. And if that's in their home, then that's fine. If it's, in a meeting place, that's fine. But the most important thing is safety. Remember as well that this is a conversation. We're talking about a way of working with our clients. So it's about meeting them where they're at. And where would you do a support meeting with them? It would be in a safe place. So absolutely, that each to their own, and that's something you can discuss with your clients themselves.
Great. The other questions then are more comments, just people thanking you and saying how interesting and wonderful the presentation was. So
Thank you.
there's nothing else to respond there. Unless there are any other questions that come in, I'm going to end the webinar now. I just want to say one last thank you to Sharon. And if you do have questions that come to you later on today or tomorrow, you can feel free to email me and I can put you in touch with Sharon as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Sharon.